Welcome to 100 Days of Python, the Python coding challenge where we code along with each other and we learn new things. Today is day 31, and if you want access to the entire list of projects, you can check out my website at www.bmosley.com/hdp. Let's get going. So today we're going to take a look at a project that kind of represents maybe a real-world scenario where we would be using a dictionary object and some custom functions to create a more complex application that's command line but uses a significant amount of data. So I'm going to create an employee database, and sometimes when you are creating a database, it's helpful to create a model database that kind of has some sample data in it. You don't necessarily need to keep that after you're finished, but sometimes it helps just to sort of create your dictionary object. So I'm going to create a nested dictionary, and inside that I'm going to call it DEMP for employee database. And inside that dictionary, each employee record is going to be a dictionary object. And the key for the dictionary object, I'm going to have it be an employee number. And these are going to be unique. Each employee is going to have their own number, but I'm going to start it at an EMP1. And the value for that is going to be a dictionary object. So I'm going to create a dictionary inside that. And we'll have, let's say, fname. We'll keep it pretty simple as far as the data fields go, and you can add to this later if you want more challenge or you want something else. We'll keep it pretty simple at first, but you can add to this later if you want more data in there. So I'll create fname, Bill, and lname, and that's string Mosley. And let's also have an age in here. And my age. And then we will have maybe an email. And then let's do a salary. And we'll just call it a yearly salary. So we'll say, I don't want to have tabs in between those, just a space will do. Let's make sure that I'm being uniform here. There we go. And the salary is going to be a float. So we're going to say, let's say $98,753.27. And we don't need a comma there. And so there is my dictionary object. Now each employee is going to have their own one of these. So if I want to add a second employee, I can just copy this as a model. Now the reason I have a comma here is because I'm creating a second object there in this employee database. And I need a unique key. So this is employee 2, Dave Smith, 25, and he'll make 45,000. And D Smith, we'll leave the domain on that email the same. And so now I have 2 employees in my database, and you can kind of see the pattern here. The key in the primary dictionary is going to be the employee number, the employee ID number. And then the value, of course, is another dictionary object. And in that dictionary object, I've got key and value pairs, fname, lname, age, email, salary. Same for the second employee. That's really important because we want to keep that data model or the data structure consistent. So now, as I do things with this, let's say I want to retrieve the first name of employee 2. So if I wanted to print DEMP, I would say emp2, and then fname. So when I run that, there we go. It prints Dave for me, which is, of course, the first name of employee 2. And you can see the notation that I used to access that is pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to create an application that will allow me to manage this. And so in terms of creating an application, let's just delete that. The first thing I want to do is, of course, welcome the user. So we'll create a standard little header here that it welcomes the user. We'll go 60 characters wide for our line width, and so we can use that consistently throughout the application. Print this plus employee database, and we're going to center that in a line of 58, and then we'll say plus another asterisk, and then we will copy that and paste it. So when I run that, we get our little welcome screen there, and then we will throw in a couple of line breaks, and we can get into the program. So what I'm going to do here is I want to show a menu, and rather than have that be part of my regular code, I'm going to create a function, and I want to create a function up here at the top of my program so that it's out of the way. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say show menu. And so I'm going to print, and I'm going to use triple quotes here, triple quotes, and that way I can do a multi-line string here. So 1, add an employee. 2, terminate an employee. And let's see, what else might I want to do? Well, let's just leave those 2 for now. We can add to this later. But now I can show the menu easily whenever I want to. So let's go ahead and show the menu, and that will print out the menu there. So if I run this, there's my menu. Kind of a lot of space in here. I think I'm going to remove one of those 2 lines that I print. So I'll just print a blank line, and that closes that up a little bit better. So I show the menu, and then I say str menu equals, and we're going to say input, what would you like to do? Choose 1 or 2. Okay, so hopefully the user will take the hint and choose either 1 or 2, which will allow you to add an employee or delete an employee. So for now, my menu choices are pretty simple, but I'm just going to create a if-then, if str menu equals 1, and remember the input is going to give us a string. Since I'm not doing math on it, I'm going to leave it a string. And for now, I'm going to put pass in there as a placeholder. elif str menu equals 2. Again, pass will be a placeholder there for the actual code that I'm going to use. And then else, if they don't enter something that makes sense according to my menu, then I want to give them an error message. Print, you need to choose let's say enter a number for the menu choice. And then we'll put a blank line there. Okay, so now we want to make sure that they enter something good there, and that requires them to choose one of those things. Of course, now if they don't choose that, it's just going to say you need to enter a menu choice, and that's going to end. We're not going to worry too much about that right now, because right now what I want to do is work on adding a new employee. And so let's work on this. And I'm going to say def add employee. And there is my my input prompt here. Now, what I want to do is make sure that I get the right kind of data for each of these things. And notice that some of these are things that we can easily validate, and some are a little more complicated, like an email address. For now, I'm just going to get each piece of data and trust that the user is going to input it correctly. That's a bad decision out in the real world, but we're just going to go ahead and do that. For the sake of simplicity here, we're going to go ahead and take that. But what we want to do is for our add employee function, we want to give it the data structure so that we can add to it and return a new data structure. So we're going to say emp data as an argument. Okay, so we're going to hang on to that. And so now we want to get a first name, last name, age, email address, and salary. So let's do this. We're going to say str fname equals input. What is the first name? Str last name equals input. What is the last name? Str, you know what, I'm going to make that a little shorter. Make sure my capitalization works right. Str, let's do the age next. So that is int age equals, and I'm going to transform that into an int input. And we're going to say, what is the age? Next is email. Str email equals input. What is the email? And then last is salary. That's a float, salary. Okay, so we'll say float input. What is the salary? Okay, so we'll do that. And then we have to first construct this inner dictionary. And so we're creating dtemp, or we'll call it dinner. And we'll say the dictionary is going to be fname, str fname, comma, L name. Now, really important here that I'm mimicking these fields exactly the same. Last name is going to be str last name. And then we've got age, right? And we've got int age. And then we've got email. We have str email. And finally, salary. And we have FL salary. Okay, so there is the inner one. And next, I'm going to need to get whatever the new employee ID is going to be. And the best way to do that is to have that be an automated process. So I'm going to need to find a way to automate that process. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another function outside of the add employee function. So def get ID, and it's going to take the data as an argument. And then what we're going to do inside that function is the first thing I want to do is check to make sure that the data is not empty. Because if I'm adding the first employee, I'm not going to have any data. So if I'm going to say if not employee data, then return emp1. So that would be the first employee. If the data is completely empty, that just protects me against errors. The next thing I'm going to do is use an iterable subset. And I'm going to create this on the fly here, but we're going to say emp numbers equals, and we're going to use this because we're creating a list, and we're creating a list from another iterable, which is the employee data. So I'm going to say int key, because it's the key of this data that I'm interested in. And I'm going to say 3 because I want to skip over the first 3. So I want to start with this because I'm going to get just a list of those numbers. So I'm going to go to the end of that number, and I'm going to say for key in emp data dot keys if, and this is my filter here, key starts with, and I'm going to give it emp. So it's only going to do this if the key starts with emp, which is if I have another record in there that's not using this format. Maybe I have a different class of employee or something, then it'll skip that. So it's going to return a new set, a new list of just the numbers in the data for all of the keys in the data. So emp1, emp2 in this case. So it's going to return a new list basically of 1 and 2. And it will convert it on the fly to an integer. So then all I have to do is get the max of that list. So if I say next ID equals the max from that list, and I'm going to say emp numbers, and just in case it's empty, I'm going to specify a default of 0, and then I'll say +1. So that double guards me against an empty set of numbers, and whatever the number that's the biggest in this list, it's going to add 1 to it, and that's going to become my next ID. So the last thing I need to do in this function is return, and I'm going to return an F string that starts with emp, and you may have guessed it, it's going to have the next ID in there as that. So if I call this function getID and I give it that, it should return the next ID number. So let's do this. I'm going to say int or str ID equals getID, and I'm going to pass it the data. I'm going to pass it the same data that was passed in here. And then I'm going to say emp data, and I'm going to use the new ID because we're going to create a new record in there, equals, and I'm going to give it the inner inner data as the value. So I'm going to create a new record in EMP data with that as the key, and this is the value, which is, of course, the data itself. And so now I need to return EMP data with its modified, and we are going to want to print out a result. Let's do that right here before we return the data. So we'll print new employee added, and we're going to say, let's make that an F string, and we will say str f name, comma, or let's do space, strl name, and we'll say ID number, strid. There we go, and it will return that. There we go. So now we've added a new employee there. And so under menu item, I'm just going to say add employee, and I'm going to give it the employee database as the model. And that is it for that menu item. That takes care of it because it's all taken care of in the functions up here. So I'm going to run this, and let's see how it works. So we want to add an employee. What is the first name? Steve Jobs. He would be 70 today, interestingly enough. Jobs at apple.com. And salary, let's give him a lot of money. He's worth it. And there we go. Steve Jobs, ID is employee 3. And of course, now our program ends, which means that that data is lost already. But in the next section of this coding, Code Along With Me series, we will talk about how to keep the program going and also how to list the employees, okay, as well as how to terminate an employee. I'm sure it will not be Steve Jobs in this case, but thanks for coding along with me today, and I'll see you next time.